back to Otaku No Video. As always, thank you very much for joining me for my review of His and Her Circumstances, the anime series. Now, this is a series released in the mid-90s by Gainax and directed by Hideaki Anno, just after he made the Evangelion TV series. Yeah, that's right, but don't let that worry you too much. This is based on a very popular and existing shoujo manga of the time, which has its own implications. We'll get to that in a second. Now, the overall animation and art style are highly stylized. It actually looks like a shoujo manga. It has this lovely soft color palette, and it's kind of hard to say, soft color palette. And it has these very simplified backgrounds that actually like fade to white on the borders. It's quite remarkable. Now, it's clear His and Her Circumstances doesn't have a huge animation budget. But being Gainax, the art is consistent throughout and done very well. It's actually, ironically, a good thing that they just went through Evangelion and the whole debacle with its budget, because it's clear that they established an artistic style that would allow them to be more inexpensive at times when they could, and so maintain roughly the same artistic and animation quality throughout the entire series. And so it does. There are a few episodes, especially a few sequences in the middle of the series where it's clear that they've got minimal animation budget, but it works. And fortunately, this is not an action series. This is about romance and characters' inner feelings. And it's actually one of the interesting things is that a lot of the dialogue is actually repeated later on in the series. As someone remembers a line of dialogue, sometimes it's displayed on screen. A word that someone said about themselves will reappear on screen, sometimes next to the character, sometimes as a title card. And it's a very effective way of making you think about what characters say and what they actually believe about themselves. And it's a very distinctive visual thing to do. The series also does a lot of cutting off to shots of normal, everyday life. Characters will be discussing something in a classroom, and they'll cut to a shot of an overflowing trash can, or bicycles all lined up outside. These normal, everyday details rendered in loving detail, because this is about normal life. The direction, precise. It can be frenetic, it can be relaxed, sometimes right after each other. Moreover, sometimes characters will be shown super deformed and then very realistic, depending on what's going through their minds. Some of these characters are somewhat schizophrenic, to be honest, because they've got issues. And that is rendered in a visual way. And I want to give the show, the staff kudos for using animation and using their medium to get across information about their characters in that way. It's a very smart thing to do. And this is all about the characters. The characters really are the core of this. This is a very relational show, and all about the relationships. The characters remain pleasantly differentiated from each other, without turning into either cliches or unbelievable extremes. You feel like these people actually could all be in the same classroom together, or could all be friends. And that's pretty remarkable in and of itself. Now, I do want to take a moment out here to talk about the voice acting, which for me was perfect in both the English dub and the Japanese dub. In particular, Veronica Taylor's portrayal of Yukino Miyazawa was pitch perfect. And that's hard because Yukino not only has a very wide emotional range, but a complex one. She's often feeling multiple things at the same time. Anger at somebody and frustration with herself tinged with regret. And all of that will come across in Veronica Taylor's voice. So, stunning work there. And the story basically progresses from one set of characters to the next. You're introduced to some of the characters, and you see kind of what's going on with them, and their relationships start to stabilize, and then other characters come in and kind of destabilize things. And as a result, because of how the story, continues, I should point out, because apparently this adapts the manga very, very faithfully. And so once they got to 26 episodes worth of content, they just stopped. There's no big ending. Now, the relationships are all relatively stabilized at that point, so it doesn't feel like you're on the edge of a cliff. But there's no big ending, which is exactly appropriate. This is about real life. Real life doesn't have big endings. Real life isn't narratively structured. And so, surprisingly enough, it works. And the whole thing is very real, very modern. Well, 90s, modern. But this is not about fantasy or science fiction or things like that. This is about the things we feel. And it's one of the core things, is these characters, for all of their weirdnesses, all of their issues, all their psychological problems and trauma, they still have to get up every morning, eat breakfast, get dressed, go to school, worry about that comment made by that person. Am I going to pass this test? Normal, everyday stuff. And the show keeps coming back to that we all have to get on with our lives, and we all have to, we all have to live. Which is remarkable considering it came out of, Anno and Evangelion and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, the music, beautiful stuff. It's very interesting. It's this sort of 60s style jet-setting pop, kind of like something out of Lupin III or a light James Bond. Lots of brass for the brighter sequences, the brighter pieces, and the quieter pieces are all piano, very quiet piano, which again works very well, and it's simple. This is not a show about big, giant symphonic music. This is about simple everyday life. You'll notice I've told you nothing about the story and basically nothing about the characters, and I won't. Part of my joy in His and Her Circumstances was coming in knowing very little about it and realizing these are the characters? This is what they're going through? This is who I'm going to be following? And this character comes in. I was very intrigued as those characters were introduced and as I was continuing on with the story. And I'm not going to spoil any of that for you if you want to watch His and Her Circumstances. Again, like I said, the characters are all very well drawn and go together. In fact, that's the thing, is that this is one of those shows that kind of does everything except for action, technically. There's romance, there's drama, there's comedy, there's character development, and it's all done exceedingly well. You may not like it because it's shoujo or because, you don't get into the characters, whatever, fair enough. But this is a show that is firing on all cylinders. Now, all of His and Her Circumstances has been released in English, as I mentioned, from The Right Stuff on DVD, and it is available out there. It is also, as of this recording, available for free legal streaming on the internet. Head over to streamsuki.com to check for its availability and watch the entire thing online for free, legitimately. Pretty cool. So that's it. Those are my thoughts on His and Her Circumstances. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, it's so cold being buried with average people.